Hello everybody, walk with me, let's. You know, I haven't made a video in a few days, and now that I have a little bit of traction here, as Preston would say, we don't really want to belabor this, but I do. I want to belabor the daylights out of it. Till this is over, you'll believe in Sasquatch, unicorns, the moon landing, and the old WWE wrestling. That's how serious I am. So first, like I said, I never planned to be some kind of a YouTube star, so having 500 and some odd subscribers, I do check, is shocking. But my first video was all about this and all the quirks, and we're going to cover all of those front to back in a little less choppy of a manner, I would say. As I was doing the first video, I was discovering more things when I really got to crawl around on the ground with it, because I already accepted what it is and I wasn't worried about proving it to anybody else, but all of a sudden I became obsessed with it. So I did. But I wasn't always quite the polished and articulate linguist that I am today. So buckle up for that. So we're going to go one by one through each thing, starting at the very beginning, and we're going to inspect every little piece. Hopefully to save myself a future argument with somebody that says I don't own a Honda experimental test unit, which the word prototype is kind of used interchangeably with, but experimental test unit is more of a broad term. So, let's begin. First, very front, you can see these two brake stay bolts are directly parallel with the axle. Okay, so a production 81, they're very clearly staggered, and it's a disc brake. So the fact that this has a drum brake and the fork tube is different stands out right away. Now everybody likes to tell me, they're like, "Oh, tricycle, you're so stupid." Some guy went to the dealer and bought an 81, and then over the years he modified it, and changed things, and cut and welded, and made it into this. Well, that might be true, but I can shut all that down. And if you think about it, all of the old machines back at this time, very few of them started from nothing. The little bit I've learned about some of the other ones is Tricky Dicks and Kajivas and Franks and Husqvarnas. They were conversions. They were part dirt bikes. They weren't fully custom made out of somebody's garage. A large piece of them or pieces of them started out with the intent of being a dirt bike or ATV. So if you're going to buy an 81 at the dealer, this is what it had. It did not have this. So we can dwell on that all day and try to figure it out and speculate. And we'll move up a little higher. If you notice, this brake tab ear is on the front of this fork because someone has them spun around to make it leading axle. I'm assuming the ice racer that owned it after Honda was done with it, see, it was ice race, they had studs in the tires. I'm assuming they did that to get more wheelbase or what have you. But on these forks, they're smooth, both sides, inside and outside. Now this fork belongs on the other side where this one is. But look, these forks have this ear in here, and all of them do. The 200Xs do, the other air-cooled Rs, the liquid Rs, they have this ear in here, which these do not have. Either side. So these fork tubes are very early fork tubes, or they could have been off of a two-wheeled model, which I don't know. I mean, something this short and this small a diameter, I mean, you're talking an XR80 fork is more capable than this fork. So I don't even know what model they would have taken these from. And I never officially measured the diameter, but I see enough here, and then I see enough here to tell me that this was a very early fork and experimental test unit. Now we can look in there. Now, Wes McCoy claims that is not the correct logo. He says the logo he designed for American Honda Motor Special Projects is different. And Blue Line Decals, Bruce, pal of mine, he reached out to Wes and asked him about this, if he knew anything about it, because he was part of Team Honda, and if anybody would, maybe he could shed some light. And he said there was 6 of these that were given away after they were done with them at dealer conventions. Now, I don't know how many there was. This one, I think, is number 2. It's possibly engine number 2. But we don't know for sure what number this one was. But I can't believe they'd give away that frame jig. That just doesn't make sense to me. And I also talked to a guy after my first video went out. He was from Alaska, and there was some of those that came up to wherever he lived at the time, Minnesota maybe, or Canada or somewhere. And they said they were prototypes, and they had 3-speed transmissions. So I still have some research to do. This isn't set in stone. But this thing is not this thing. Moving on. Look at these triple clamps. They're solid here. No holes, no nothing. You have your steering stops. And they're very rudimentary, very crude. These are not very fit and finish, not a whole lot of polish and luster to them. They served their purpose, and that was it. So now, you got to look closely. What's that right there? That would be a hole with a rubber isolator in it, and it holds the framework that supports the headlight. The framework goes up inside the plastic here. The light mounts into there, and the frame, see if we can see it from the back. Yeah, there's a good view. Right there. There's a hole on both sides. Okay, yet again. Tricycle, you're so stupid. Some guy went to the dealer and bought an 81 and made it into this claim to be prototype. Well, then where did he get these triple clamps with no headlight holes? Because production ones had headlight holes. And they had the little webbings here too. They changed the forging to make these a little stronger. So maybe they found out this was weak. Maybe they found out they didn't like it. I don't know. Now it does have a rough raised area for the Honda badge, but it's not machine smooth. It's not flat. It's got a little bit of a taper to it. So now the most obvious thing is this neck. And this was just for simplicity, I assume. You could unbolt this. I call it a main cap. If you're into engine building and understand engines, you'd know what a main cap is. Pull this main cap off, then you don't lose all the balls in this thing, top and bottom. There's lots of ways to tear these necks apart, and throwing the balls all over the floor is usually involved in all of them. And this has a letter B. See if I can get in here next to it. Yep, B. B. That is jig B. So now, yeah, some kid and his dad cut the frame off and then re-welded it all together at this convergence area, and then machined this plate, and then machined the main cap, and then the other half, and they made it all absolutely perfect so they could adjust it and change it. Now, the way metal pulls when you weld it, I would imagine this thing had to have been in some way locked down in a frame jig or something, because they were checking minute differences. I mean, from the 82 to the 83, the rake changed substantially. Then, in 85, they brought it back in, which made for tighter steering, but a little less high-speed stability. And 86, they kicked it out 1 degree. How do you measure 1 degree of rake when you're a kid and his dad with an old stick heliarc welder and little more than a plug-in Sawzall to cut that apart? So that's why I throw that story out the window right away. But you could totally do away with this, just with everything else that's here. This really plays in as minimal to the story. So moving further back. Now, you look here, this ignition cover. That is a round cover that has no square notch for the ignition pieces coming out the front here. Oh, it's out the back, I mean. Out the back. It's not there. like it is on the production models, like so. Okay, so if you went to a dealer and you bought that, it didn't have this. Where did this come from? Questions. I have more questions for you than you have answers if you so choose to argue about this. Now, staying right up here with the engine. These engine mounts are welded. Really long piece of steel welded. And it ain't like some kid and his dad welded that with a big old booger stick welder. And I'm sure at this time, even into the mid-80s, I don't think MIG welders were that hot of a deal. That thing was not homemade welded. I think that was welded by somebody that was very proficient and knew what they were doing. And look at the size of that thing. If I went to a dealer and bought an 81, it had very small plate mounts that bolted on inboard of the frame. So if I bought an 81 and I turned it into this so-called experimental test unit, it would have this. Why would you go to the time to grind all this off and then do something totally stupid and weld it solid so when you wrecked and bent the frame, the engine would never fit back in once it came out? Furthermore, with this style of mount, we can refer to the literature. And there we see that same style of mount in a later prototype because it has this. It's got the newer casting, newer shape of ignition cover, but with the old weld-on mounts. It also has the parallel bolts for the hydraulic disc brake setup. This one was manufactured after mine. They still had the welded-on mounts, and they still had the parallel bolts, but they changed them post-testing, pre-production. So we go further on back. Now we look at the rear brake assembly. Now this caliper, master cylinder, caliper's in the back. This master cylinder bolts here with one bolt, and then there's another bolt down in behind. Very hard to see from the angle you're looking at it from, but there is one back there. And it has this. Okay, so now you're going to tell me, oh, tricycle, that's just an 82 frame that somebody modified. After all this, you're still going to tell me it's an 82 frame somebody modified. Okay, we'll get a good look. Look at how that works. One singular tab on the front, and this here that looks just like every other robotically Japanese welded piece. Okay, so you're going to tell me it's an 82 frame. Except an 82 frame is super stiff and super rigid in this area with 2 bolt ears. It does have this, which was probably the revised edition of the one we just looked at, but it's not the same master cylinder. So, they were, at the time, Honda was kicking around the idea of an industry first front and rear disc brake 3-wheeled racing machine. So take that. And the 82 frame is substantially different. An 81 fender won't even fit because this is here. So if I have an 82 frame that was taken backwards for some dumb reason, I don't know why, which it can't be because we proved it right here. But if this were there, it'd be an 82 frame. That's a production 81 frame. That is an experimental test unit frame. It's not an 82 frame. Also, this little ear down here, which I kind of forgot, is a smaller, thinner ear than what the 81 has. It's very hard to tell the difference. But if you look in the literature here, it wasn't even there on that one. And then they went to this. So I think there was some revisions of that being made at the time. And then this idea they decided was not strong enough. Let me get the focus. Right there behind the brake pedal. There's no hood around that bolt head. like there is. And this one looks pretty dang beefy. And this one looks a little skimpier. So there's a little tweak and change there in that piece too. So going back to the brakes, the rear brake setup. Now we look at the caliper area. See how that caliper, it's a trapezoidal shaped piece with 2 holes in it, and it stops about the top here, about the center of the carrier. Get down in here level with it. I don't know if the flashlight helps or hurts, so we'll use it with or without. So that's where the caliper would mount. Now sadly I'm missing this one, and I don't know if it takes an 82 caliper or not. But this swing arm is not an 82 swing arm, and it is for sure not an 81. 81 had drum brakes with a big tab there, and then it holds that big 3/4 inch anchor pin for the backing plate. So let's look at a disc rear 82. Oh wait, that tab swings the whole way down here, almost down around the carrier. So that swing arm is an experimental test unit swing arm. It is not an 82, and it's not an 81. There's another difference. So we go back and we'll just refresh our memory with that. So we have the front brake mounting, the forks, the ignition cover, the weld-on engine mounts, the front neck, the headlight mounting holes in the triple clamps, the master cylinder mounting area, the fluid reservoir. See, it's up here farther, not down here in the curve. Way down here in the curve, narrower. So for anybody, and this cover's a little different too, I'll just add that in additionally. It does not say made in Japan across the bottom down underneath the shifter. And over here, the bolt there does not say oil check, because they weren't worried about it. They were trying to get these cases cast so they could get the things out the door. It was only later in production time where they put oil check and made in Japan. So, if you're going to buy an 81 and then you're going to go backwards with it to make it into that, that thing came before this thing. That's all there is to it, and there's no change in my mind. You have the brake hole mounting, you have the little square nubs on the back of the forks, you have the neck, you have the lack of headlight bolt or headlight rubber isolator holes, you have the different casting there, different shape, the mold, you have all the rear brake snafus. Then you have the swing arm that has a difference for the caliper mount. And then this piece here is like a little piece of stamped, and it's 2 pieces that are come down and bent away from each other. Then this, which is an 81 production model. Now the rubbers are on this one, but it's much bigger. We'll do it side by side here. Trying to talk and hold my light at the same time. There's that one. See, these are really low. They're almost touching right there. Then you come over here and you see how high these are. Different shape. This has a big oval hole in the bottom. This one just has a small circle hole in the bottom. Where'd this piece come from? I don't think when you bought a fiberglass fender from Sundahl, you got this piece with it. You had to reuse your stock one. Then we'll go over here. Where did I put it? There it is. There's the 82 fender. We'll see how that one looks. Oh, I got too much stuff in here. I can't move. That looks stunningly like the 81 production. So we got the oval hole, and then we got the extra feather height. So there's enough pieces of that puzzle there that I can say with the utmost confidence, nobody's going to tell me that I'm wrong. Like I said, the harshest critic will walk away saying, well, you know, he may have something there. And I think there was something funny. No, that's the same. Weld-on mounts. I'm trying to run through everything in my head. I don't want to miss nothing. I don't want to leave a shadow of doubt for anybody. Oh, man, I did forget something. The creme de la creme. Right there. 961AE 0020. I showed this in my other video. I like McWorth. He had the best description of it. A forensic analysis. I like that. So then we lay the light down right here. We put the light behind there. Focus. 961AE00. Is that 3 something? I don't know. I've studied it. I can't figure it out. But it's 961AE something. I'm really shaking, so it's hard for you to see. But that really seals the deal in my mind. And what's really crazy, if you look at this prototype, this is the Honda 81 Red Book. This is where I get all my information from. And these brochures do have typos. They do have screw-ups. There is things wrong with them. Like, there's the inline brake bolt holes. And there's the inline brake bolt holes. And there's the inline brake bolt holes. None of them left the factory with the brake bolt holes in line. And then here is the 81 brochure. There, they're staggered. Oh, that's the 82 brochure, that's why. Where's the 81 at? Here it is. I got too much stuff and not enough workbench here, which is, my workbench is the 84. I'm all wrapped up and home from the museum, by the way, if you were wondering. Yeah, there's the 81. They're staggered. Bolt on. Motor mounts. Got the serial number on the engine, the little tag it's riveted. It would be TB06E cast into the case, and then that would be hand stamped with the number. You have the rear cable brakes for the cable operated drum in the rear. Now, look closely. Right above my finger. See if this helps or hurts. That little red thing with the 2 holes in it. What does that look like? And what does that little hole there, that little ear there look like? It's beginning to look a lot like prototypes. That is not on. The reservoir cup is not on in that prototype picture. And you can just see, there's some black paint there, but the leak and brake fluid took it all off. If I were to get down like this and block that out, you can just see what you would see. That ear right there, and then the cup would be missing, but the bracket's there. So, this one in the book that has the inline fork bolts, brake bolts, excuse me, the weld-on motor mounts, and it also does not have an aluminum tag on the engine, and it has the rear disc brake setup. This one and mine are very, very similar. I would imagine this one came after mine because mine had the neck issue. No, it doesn't need a chiropractor. It just has a neck problem. So, and this one has a headlight. So that would mean the triple clamps are drilled to accept the headlight. So, you can decide what you want to decide. You can say what you want to say. Now here's something really neat. Look how big that gas tank is. That's a Baja Racer. That gas cap is well above the headlight. When you look at a production one, the gas cap is about even or a little under the top of the headlight. It's even with the handlebar clamps. Look there. That's way above the handle. That's an oversized metal gas tank for a 250R. Imagine getting your hands on one of them. That was factory only stuff. Everybody always tells me, oh, Dean Sundahl would know, Dean this, Dean that. Well, I wish somebody would get a hold of him and tell him I have this thing. I'd like him to autograph it. Then it would be worth a lot more. Because King Dean's signature would be right there, next to the Team Honda. So if you're going to tell me that somebody bought this right here and somehow in their driveway fabricated it into this, you're wrong. It just is not possible. This is an experimental pre-production prototype Honda ATC 250R that I believe was built sometime around the year 1978. It was used, tested, modified, and screwed around with until they got it right. At which point, they went into production with that. In between those two times of this being manufactured and that being manufactured, they took pictures of this one, and these, because this one hadn't been ridden, the disc is smooth. This one has been ridden, the brake disc is all rutted up, but there ain't even no bolts holding the engine in. I mean, the plate's bolted to the engine, but there ain't no bolts attaching to the frame. Same thing here. And this engine don't even have a aluminum serial tag on it. And that's not this machine, because this has well-known mounts. Now this one, very likely, this one here could very likely be this one. I studied it and searched, and I can't find any differences as to why this dirty brake rotor here isn't this one. I think this and this one are the same, but I know this is a different one. So when you do this much research, and you do this much comparison and studying and all this, then you're allowed to tell me that I'm crazy, I'm stupid, my story is not to be believed, I'm a liar, whatever. So when you get to doing all this, then you can tell me I'm wrong. But until then, stay supple, my friends.